I'm Bergs from the Casual Athlete, and this is NRL Last Minute Madness for Round 8. What's happening, guys? Bergs here from the Casual Athlete, back to hit you again with our last minute madness for round 8, where we go through our tips, our fantasy analysis, and some big predictions via the TBC Live app that you can download in the description below. Longy is unfortunately not with me once again this week, but he has sent through some killer predictions, and I will cover those in the games that we have for this week. But before we get into those games, guys, just a reminder to like and subscribe to the channel. We bring out so much content each and every week. We really appreciate the support. We are almost at 16,000 subscribers, guys, and we can't thank you enough for the help. Keep giving us support, and we do very much appreciate it. Now, without further ado, let's get into the games for round 8. Alrighty, guys, the first game of the round takes place at Suncorp Stadium, where the Broncos will be taking on the Bulldogs. Now, the Dogs are killing it at the moment, cannot take anything away from them, and they come into this game fresh off the bye. And with that being said, the Broncos are reeling in recent weeks. They have not had the best run of it coming into this fixture. They are missing a few troops as well. Ricky is out for this game. That is some late mail that has just come through. He has picked up an infection. And then we also have Reece Walsh out for the next 4 weeks, possibly. So that means that Selwyn Cobbo moves to the fullback spot. But for me, the big matchup that I'd like to highlight for this game is a couple of guys that could be in that New South Wales Blues centre conversation. There's been a lot of talk about Bronson Jerry in recent weeks. I love what he's been doing, but I do think we do have better options. And Staggs has been in and around the conversation before, and that's why I've backed Staggs to get 5 tackle breaks this week. Not sure he's going to do that just against Bronson Jerry, but I expect Staggs to have a few runs. He definitely steps up in some big games. And with the tip on this one, it's definitely swayed more towards the Dogs. Obviously, 70% of you guys are jumping on the Dogs, which is not as much as I would have thought. I feel like a few people are picking the Broncos for a decent upset here. You do get the 3.4 points for it. And I can see why. I do think that the Broncos are being slept on a little bit in this one, but Carraz is the pick for Longy in this game. He has picked up Carraz to score 60 plus fantasy points, and I can't turn my nose up at that. Carraz is a phenomenal player, and if I was picking the New South Wales Blues origin side tomorrow, he'd definitely be in it on the wing. But as for the tip, guys, I will be sticking to the Dogs with the 1.4 points. I know not the most exciting thing in the world, but I do think that this game will be a good one to watch. And I feel like this Broncos side will just get choked out by the Dogs' defense. So let's go the Dogs in this one. Moving to the Anzac Day clashes now, and there are 3 of them to speak about. The first one takes place at Allianz Stadium, where the Roosters will be taking on the St. George Illawarra Dragons. Now, the Dragons come into this game with a little bit of confidence. They've won 2 in a row. They look pretty good. They're starting to find their groove. Gutho has been a great find for them at fullback. We all knew that he had some oomph left in the tank, and he is utilizing that at this point. And the Roosters, they're really up and down, really super inconsistent. I don't love what they produced last week, but the week before they were outstanding against the Broncos. But is that more a question for the Broncos to answer than the Roosters? I'm not too sure. But the big matchup for me in this one that I'd like to highlight, we have a couple of relative rookies out there, a lot of guys that have played less than 10 NRL games, and then the big one, Valentine Holmes, is the experienced man. So it will be the left side of the Dragons going against the right centre and winger in Nwanganita Wase and Robert Toya. Sione Finau lines up on the wing, and I do like what I see of this kid. I think he is going to be something special. I do expect the Roosters to attack him quite a fair bit, and that is why I've backed Nwanganita Wase to grab 2 tries this game. I just feel like the kid is a little bit inexperienced, and they always love attacking a rookie winger and seeing how he holds up on the defensive end. And Longy has backed Toby Couchman to score 60 plus fantasy points. Now, I'm a bit surprised about the Dragons' middle rotation at the moment. Toby Couchman this year getting a lot more minutes than I thought he was going to get. They did sign David Klemmer as well, and with Francis Molo leaving, it was a little bit of a mess. Blake Laurie spent a lot of time in reserve grade, and then there's a guy who I expect to be the next Payne Haas, not even getting a game right now in Loco Pacific Tonga. So, yeah, their middles are really interesting to me, going with a very mobile forward pack. Seems to be the trend in the NRL at this point in time. As far as the tip goes, it's really 50-50, 51% on the Dragons right now, with 58% on the Roosters. Now, I know that doesn't math. The math ain't mathin', but I will be selecting the Roosters in this game. I do think they have a bounce back, and they always produce some of their best football on Anzac Day against the Dragons. And this game is always a cracker, but we'll be selecting the Roosters in this game. For the next Anzac Day game, we make our way across the ditch where the Warriors will be taking on the Knights. Now, the Knights aren't in a great position at all. There's been talk that Adam O'Brien should step down as coach. That won't be happening. His contract, I think, is for the next 2 years as well. I think it's including this year and then the next 2 years. I think with Dylan Brown coming there, they're not exactly sure what he's going to be for the club. I'm hearing halfback, but I don't love that signing if that is the case. And for the Warriors, they got a great win last week. They really surprised me in more ways than one. I love the fact that they have the best completion rate in the competition. They just play very simple football. They're not as dynamic, both of these teams, on the offensive side of the ball. So you're not going to get, shall I say, any flick passes or any trick plays or anything like that. They are very straight up and down. The only real outsider to that is Ponga, because he's always the X factor, but we haven't really seen anything from him since round one. And the big predictions for this game for both of us, I will highlight Longies first. Thomas Cant getting 40 plus fantasy points now. That's very interesting considering he's named on the bench this week. Matt Croker starting. Possibly Longy is thinking that Thomas Cant will come on and play some minutes in the middle. They do get Dylan Lucas back this week, the Knights, and he has been highlighted in our big matchup. And he was playing the kind of football that, if you had asked me when he got injured, like right around the time he got injured, to pick him in my New South Wales side, I would have had no problem with it. He was playing that well, in my opinion, and I expect him to come out and make a splash in this game and get 4+ offloads. He was an offloading machine before he got injured. As for the tip, though, I'm going to stick on the Warriors. They've been great at home, and I just don't see them losing to the Knights over there. The last game on Anzac Day is down at Amy Park, where the Storm will be taking on the Rabbitohs. Now, the Rabbitohs have only beaten the Storm 7 times in their history, and that's not a good record when you're heading down to a team's home turf and a team that is so good off the back of losses. But the Storm have a couple of outs this week. They have Kane Bradley on the wing. They did have him there last week, but Jack Howarth got injured last week, so he won't be there. And then we all know the big one. Harry Grant is not in this side at the moment due to a hamstring injury, and that opens the door for Bronson Garlick to get more of a shot, but he's nowhere near the kind of player that Harry Grant is. Harry Grant's also their leader, their captain. He leads by example out there, and I just think that the Storm could potentially lose their way in this game, but not a lot of the tippers agree with me on that one. 1.1 points for tipping Melbourne, and then you get the 5 points for going on the Rabbitohs. Now, this is a huge tip to get the upset on if you can get it right. There's been a lot of big 5-pointers get over the line this year, including some last week, and I just don't know if the Rabbitohs have the gumption to win a game like this, go down to Melbourne and beat Melbourne in Melbourne. They made a couple of changes, and the one does include Latrell Mitchell, and he's been highlighted by both me and Longy in our predictions. Longy's backing over to 70 fantasy points. Back at fullback, I don't mind that call at all. I do think he'll have a few more run meters, a few more try assists, maybe back himself to run the ball a little bit more. At 5'8", he was doing a lot of kicking, not really his usual position. So I think that back at home in a position that he feels a bit more comfortable in, Latrell can get over the line, and that's why I've backed him to give 2 try assists to probably the left winger this week. I think it will be Isaiah Tass, so probably put Isaiah Tass down for at least an anytime try scorer bet, but I will be sticking on the Storm for this tip, and it's not exciting, it's not sexy, but I just love the Storm off the back of a loss, and I just don't think they get many wrong in that regard. So let's go the Storm. We move to North Queensland, where the Cowboys will be taking on the Titans. Now, I loved what the Cowboys were doing prior to their bye last week. They strung a couple of really good wins together. They still lack a little bit on the defensive side of the ball, but coming up against a Titans side that is not playing anywhere near their best football, and David Fafita still struggling to prove his fitness for this game. Khan Pereira has been named, but we don't know if he's going to play for the game as well. Jaden Campbell will definitely be out, and that leaves Thomas Weaver in a very interesting position, like he was last week. But they started the game really well, and I just thought it faded away from that 20-minute point in the game, and I do think the Cowboys have the better side in this one collectively. I love the Titans team look on paper, but again, it's one of those things where it never really gets to the field, and you're always wondering why they aren't better than they actually are. Which was highlighted by the fact that two Cowboys have been named in the predictions this week, one from Longy, one from myself. Jackson Purdue to gain 50 fantasy points. I think he's coming up against Philip Sami this week, so that is a juicy matchup for him on that left-hand side. No doubt he has been one of the form youngsters in the competition this year. And then for me, I've gone Thomas Dearden because he is going up against Chris Randall this week with Thomas Weaver. Surely Dearden gets over for a dummy and go try here. I don't love Thomas Weaver as a defensive option. And Chris Randall, definitely more of a middle defender than a second rower. Not the bloke I would have put in at second row. Obviously, if David Fafita is fit, he might slot into that position. Either that or they will move Beau Fermor from the left to the right to be able to contain Dearden. But I do think that Dearden will get over for a try in this game, and I do think the Cowboys will go on for the victory. 74% of you agree with me on that one. It is the 1.3 points, but I just think the Cowboys are in the right headspace right now to get a win against the Titans. Game 6 of round 8 is at CommBank, where the Panthers will be taking on the Manly Sea Eagles. Now, the Panthers have a great record over the Sea Eagles. They've lost one game to them since 2018, but they've made a couple of changes from last week's side. Isaac Tungo moves back into the centres. He's up against Tolu Kola this week, and we've all seen the defensive efforts from Tungo in this start to the season. It has not been great. That is the reason that they dropped him back to the bench last week. But Tolu Kola, if you give him some early ball, he could definitely make Tungo look like a bit of a fool. And I loved what the Panthers did last week. They finally got some attack going. That's one thing that we need to highlight. But will it continue is the big question. Their defense was much better. I just think that this Manly side are really dealing with a lot of inner company turmoil right now. And Seabold's been questioned. They've got DCE on the bubble. Should he step down from captaincy? Should he stay out of Origin to focus on Manly this season? They get Turbo back, but is it going to be much of a difference? I liked what Lehigh Hopewadi was doing as well. I don't love what they're doing right now, and I feel like I've got to go with Penrith in this game. I know it's the 1.3 points, and we love getting on a bit of an upset in this competition, and I'm actually doing quite well on the TBC live tipping com. I'm coming 15th overall, but I just think that I need to take the 1.3 points here, and I just think that Manly are in a bit of a disarray. And yes, the predictions don't really highlight much excitement for this game. I think we got Jazz Tavanga with 50 plus fantasy points. He's going to need a few minutes to be able to sustain that. I know Jake Zbrojevic is out for this game, so that definitely does help him there. He's been playing a lot of minutes at hooker, so we'll see if he can keep that up. Jazz Tavanga, when he does get minutes, he is quite a decent scorer. Definitely not a buy, in my opinion. I'm not going after him, but I don't know. Talk to Longy about that one, but I don't mind the pick of Jazz Tavanga getting 50 fantasy points. And I've just gone for Dylan Edwards to be a workhorse in this one. If Penrith are going to get over the line, it starts with Dylan Edwards at the back. He does most of the running out of the backfield for them, and he will get 160 total run meters, but I will be sticking with the Panthers in this tip. Game 7 is down in the nation's capital, where we have the Raiders taking on the Dolphins. Now, the Raiders and Dolphins both got great wins last week. Raiders came from behind and beat the Titans, and so did the Dolphins. They surged past the Storm, and You got to say it happened pretty much 20 minutes in the game for both teams. The resurgence started, and yeah, it's showing that they're not the greatest starters to games, but this is possibly the most 50-50 game of the weekend. I think maybe outside the Roosters Dragons game, a lot of people are getting on the Raiders. They think that there is potential there for them to be a top four team this year, and I love what they're doing, but I just don't know if they can sustain it. And there is a loss coming somewhere with the Raiders. They aren't this team that just exudes excellence and consistency. But as long as Jamal Fogarty is in the side, he provides them with so much stability. It's not funny. They rely on him so much for victories as well. But will he stay at the club? I suppose that's a question for another video. The big matchup for me in this one is Tomoko and Savage on the right side going against Herbie Farnworth and Jack Bostock on the left side. I thought Herbie was outstanding last week. He really came back into form, in my opinion, and he gave the Dolphins the shot in the arm that they needed to get past the Storm. And it's probably highlighted by the fact that Longy has picked him to score 60 plus fantasy points this week. Don't hate it at all. Love Herbie Farnworth. We'll try and find a way to fit him into my team if I could, but unfortunately, I've gone for a few cheaper centers, and he was very expensive to start the season and didn't have a great start to the season at all either. Plus, was playing on the wrong side for me. Don't love the right hand side for Herbie Farnworth. Just stick to the left, mate. It's all good. And then I've gone Hudson Young to get 4 offloads. Hudson Young, I think we need to start talking that he could be starting for New South Wales, and I don't joke lightly about that. I loved what Crichton and Martin did for us last year, but if we're going to go on form, Hudson Young by far is one of the most in-form second rowers in this competition. I love what the guy does. He's competing on every play, and he's a bit of a grub, and as a New South Wales supporter, you need a little bit of a grub in there. As far as the tip is concerned, man, I'm torn. I love what the Raiders have been producing each and every week, and I wasn't worried last week when they went down. I always thought that they had the points in the comeback. I feel less confident on the Dolphins. So unfortunately, I'm going to stick with the Raiders in this one and bag my 1.7 points. Get on the Dolphins if you want to. No doubt there'll be a late surge for the Dolphins. So you may get a few more points for the Raiders. I expect this to be much more 50-50. Let's get on the Raiders here. Last game of the round, and it is at Leichhardt Oval. For the first time this season, the Tigers head to Leichhardt, and the big matchup in this game has the potential for major explosion. Taruva thought he came up against one of the best nigglers in the game last week in the form of Parramatta's Sean Russell, but he didn't realise that he is up against Ronaldo Mulatalo this week, left winger versus right winger. I do think that Taruva could give away a couple of penalties in this one and potentially lose his head. Like I said, Mulatalo can get under your skin. He's gotten under my skin, and I don't play against him, and I'm just a fan of the game. Don't love the bloke on the field, but he is a phenomenal player. As far as the tip is concerned, 3.6 points for the Tigers and 1.4 points for the Sharks. I don't love the fact that they've already backflipped on keeping Lachlan Galvin out of the side. It seems so petty now. If you're going to say something and say you're going to play reserve grade for the next 2 years, then stick to it. Don't just backflip a week later. It just makes it look ridiculous. There's a lot going on with the Tigers right now, and it does have the smell of this could potentially derail the club's rebuilding plans, head them down towards the bottom of the ladder where they could end up getting the spoon again. Like that's how far I could see them falling from this fallout. Um, it's really tough for me, but I will get on them this week. I do love what the Tigers had been doing prior to last week's game. They just need to bring the team together and stop taking pot shots at their own team. Like, don't play the media scrutiny. Don't play the outside noise, the social media aspect. Get it all out of your head. Play the Sharks. Like, they're the team that's in front of you. They have a big bopper to go against their big bopper in Adam Fanua-Blake, Terrell May. And then the prediction from Longy is that Britton Nakora will get a couple of tries this week. He does go against Samuela Fainu on that right-hand side of the field. I can see it happening. Britton Nakora, I feel like sometimes he needs tries to be effective in fantasy. Definitely in Supercoach, he is more of a scorer when he gets those attacking plays going. But I don't mind the Britton Nakora 60 fantasy points tip there. I will be getting on the Tigers for this one. This is one of the upsets that I'm picking for this week. I just think that they had their little weekly spat. They're not quite separated. They're not getting a divorce as yet, but it's coming. We'll reach that point when we get to it. We'll go the Tigers to grab a win here, and I'll get my 3.6 points. So, guys, that's it for Last Minute Madness this round. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know your tips, fantasy analysis, and some predictions on the TBC Live app down in the description below. And Longy will be back with me on the show next week. He's just doing a few other things and couldn't commit to this week, but he will be back on the show. Like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll catch you on the next one.